joining us. I'm Beth Ann Silvestri, co-chair of the high school PTA committee. We are pleased to continue our career panel series tonight focused on business careers. We wanted to give a quick thank you to Mr. Tobin and Mr. Kehoe, who support this endeavor, as well as our panelists, Sarah Axelbaum, Jackie Bassani, Christina Butler, Bill Carney, Katie Doherty, and Danielle Ricotta. We're so thankful that you're here sharing your career journey with us. And on that note, I'll hand it over to my co-chair, Jen Snyder.
Hello, I'm Jen Snyder. I'm the co-chair of the high school committee, and we're going to be going around in a circle and asking each panelist to answer some questions. We're going to start out by having each of you just introduce yourself, tell what your career is, where you work, give a little bit of a detail of what you kind of do on a day-to-day basis, maybe in terms that a high schooler can understand, simple explanation. And also if you could maybe give your college major, just because I found it very interesting that not everyone's major is the same thing that they're working in right now. So I think that would be good for the kids to hear how you went from that to that. So just career, employer, a little bit about what you do, and the college major. Maybe we'll start with Christina. You look ready. Go ahead.
All right, Christina Butler. So I am with Equitable, and I've been there for 22 years. I was a graduate of Tuckahoe High School many years ago, but I've been with Equitable about 22 years. I've had various positions, but for the past 4 years, I've been a sales leader. And I've been overseeing a team of 50 people, primarily comprised of financial professionals. And they are located in Syracuse, New York, and Salt Lake City, Utah. So I do travel quite a bit. My team goal is to really help our clients that we serve secure their financial well-being through investment products so they can fulfill long lives and make sure all their kids go to college and can retire with dignity. So I studied management. I received my Bachelor of Business Administration from James Madison University in Virginia. I later received an MBA from Baruch College in New York City. And I've done many different roles over the years. Right now, being a sales leader, I love it. Every day is different. I can be coming up with a business plan to increase our sales of investment products that we sell to our clients, or I can be coaching my team members. Each day is different, and I love being a part of it. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Christina. That was great. How about Sarah? You want to give us your information?
Sure thing. Hi, I'm Sarah Axelbaum. My pronouns are she and her. And I work at a company called MIQ, and we do advertising technology, which I'll explain a little bit. I actually run our diversity, equity, and inclusion program, and I do that globally. So I work across 13 different countries, and my job is to make sure that the company looks like the world that we're in. So making sure that every single person feels represented, that we are hiring people from all different types of backgrounds. And then also once they are in the company, that they feel like they belong there, they feel like they're included. And basically we look at the entire culture of how everyone works at the company and make sure we have moments that we can celebrate together. So we make sure that we celebrate all of the holidays that everyone might celebrate and get to know one another more than just what we do every day for work. I didn't start in this career. I actually started in advertising in the tech sector. So basically, I used to work at an advertising agency, and then I worked in ad sales. And now I get to work on more of the culture and people programs within an ad tech company, which is really exciting. I went to Ithaca College and I majored in television and radio, and I minored in theater, which was actually a really helpful part of how I ended up where I am today.
Great, thank you, Sarah. How about Bill?
Sure. So my name is Bill Carney. I am Director of Sales for a company called Ampersand, which probably doesn't mean a lot to anybody, but essentially we sell television advertising on TV. So we represent Verizon and Altice are two of our companies that we represent. So if you watch any cable TV on Verizon or Altice, you've probably seen commercials that I've sold. So I manage a team of sellers in the East Coast. We deal with advertising agencies who represent big brands. So I worked on the advertising agency side for a while. So I bought commercial time for State Farm and for Visa. So any commercials that you saw on air, I was the one who bought it. Now I just kind of moved to the sales side. So now I sell advertising time on TV. I had no intention of getting into advertising. I majored in history and business. I minored in business. I was going to law school, put my deposit down, and then I did not want to go to 3 more years of school and come out, $75,000 in debt. So decided to jump into the career world.
Great, thank you, Bill. Katie, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Katie Darty. I actually went to Tuckahoe High School. I graduated in 2017. So if you guys are juniors and seniors, we were probably in the same building for a year or two. Then I went to Fairfield University, where I graduated from just last May. So I've been working as a risk engineering representative for Zurich Insurance ever since. I was lucky enough to get a job right after college. So basically what I do is I go to different occupancies and evaluate their fire protection, which doesn't sound too fun, honestly, but I get to see a lot of different things. I go everywhere in Manhattan, office buildings, apartment buildings. I've been to some copper molding plants, which is crazy. But then I get to come home every day and I write up a report about it. And I work on a team based out of New York, which is really fun. So I get to meet a lot of different people. And yeah, my job is actually remote. So I do work from home most days, but it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
And what did you major in college, Katie?
Oh, sorry. I was a math major with econ and Irish studies minors. So insurance wasn't exactly what I was going for, but I kind of stumbled upon it.
Great, thank you. Danielle, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Sure. I'm Danielle Ricotta. I am a co-founder and partner of Springboard Legal Search. We are a search firm that specializes in helping lawyers find new roles. So on a day-to-day basis, I work either one-on-one with experienced lawyers who are thinking about entering the market, thinking about moving their practice to another firm, moving in-house. And then I also work strategically with law firm partnerships, chairmen, chairwomen on achieving their strategic goals for recruiting and hiring. I went to Ramapo College of New Jersey and I graduated with a social work and a psychology degree. I didn't actually even know recruiting was a field. I thought I was going to be a social worker, and I was waiting for Administration of Children's Services to call me to become a caseworker. And my parents were like, well, that's great, but you have to get a job. So I sort of fell into recruiting, and now I've been doing it for over 20 years. My first role was within a law firm doing recruiting, working as a recruiting assistant. And then I segued to being the person that helps law firms find lawyers.
Great, thank you, Danielle. And Jackie, go ahead.
All right, great. So my current role, I am the Executive Vice President and Chief People Officer for IMAX. So hopefully many of you are consumers watching all of the great blockbuster movies on our IMAX screens. If you need a local one, there's one right in New Rochelle or Port Chester, wherever you'd like to go. But my role is specifically focused in HR. So I lead our HR function. I report into our CEO for a publicly traded organization, really focusing on all people programs related to HR. Now, I didn't actually set out to have this role specifically. So my background is in psychology. I thought I was going to be similar to Danielle, a caseworker, but I wound up with a master's in substance abuse counseling and realized that that's not what I wanted to do. I had some practicums and found that that just wasn't where my passion was. So I went back and got another master's in industrial organizational psychology and spent 18 years in consulting. So consulting was really the core of what I had done, focusing on employee attitudinal research. So what drives employees, what motivates them, what are the different programs that you can do, how can employee engagement and satisfaction lead to business results, and linking it to strategy. So leaders understood that employees were really the key to success. And then the IMAX CEO happened to be my client. I was working with him on some culture change, and he asked me to come on board, and that's how I wound up where I am today.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to go around, and I just want everyone to just give a little brief blurb about what is the educational process, since a lot of you didn't major in what you're doing now. Is there a major you had to have done to get into your job, or is there any kind of training you need to do to get into that job, or what is the background that you need to become the career you are now? We'll start somewhere else. We'll start with Sarah.
Sure. So being a television radio major, I also concentrated in advertising and public relations. So the first part of my career was very applicable to that. And I was actually one of the very few people at an advertising agency who majored in advertising. So it was an interesting thing that so many different people from all different backgrounds wound up at in agency world. And then for me, as I segued into this new career in diversity, equity, and inclusion, I went back to school to get some certifications within a master's program. And then I did consulting for a while to really understand how I needed to function within an organization. I had been on the business side and I had a really good understanding of what the day-to-day needs were of the people I wanted to help serve. But I wanted to have a better understanding of the HR function, which is the human resources side, which is typically how a lot of people get into diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the interesting thing is that the field is pretty new. There's not a lot of people who do diversity, equity, and inclusion as a full-time job. And so as a field, it's very emerging, and there's a lot of people getting into it from many different career paths. So I've seen people like me do career switching. People are starting right out of college, or a lot of times coming in with sociology degrees or with business degrees, looking at how do we make sure that the people function within the organization really works at the best of their abilities. So it's been a really fun challenge to see how many different people come in. I have people on my team who have majored in everything under the sun, as well as some people who didn't go to college and instead they went to a technical school. So it's been really great to see just that merger of worlds coming together.
Great. That's interesting to hear about how many different ways you can get into that career. And I feel like that's going to be the theme here with everyone. So I'm going to go over to Jackie, since you're also HR related there. So see if there's a different path that you took to get there.
Yeah, so as I said before, my path was originally on, I thought I was going to do counseling. So really focusing in the psychology and really looking at more the clinical side. And then when I realized that wasn't for me, I wanted more of an applied side, but I wanted to take that psychology degree and apply it on the business end. And that's where I found industrial organizational psychology, which is also called IO psychology. And that's the business side of it. So for me, that once I started to take classes there and get my master's in that space, that really opened up a whole world, specifically in the consulting world, of where I would go in and help organizations diagnose what was going on within their company, what changes they could make, what program changes they could do, and then helping to drive into more of a broader HR function. Now, the people on my team and my HR team today, I think very similar to Sarah, have a variety of different backgrounds. Some of them are, yeah, they could be straight psychology. A lot of them are business. Some of them are management. It really does depend on, what they're specifically focusing on, whether it's operations, total rewards. It could be things like payroll, where they have a really big finance background. So the HR world it's a lot of variety to it, especially depending on where you might want to focus.
Okay, great, thanks. So I'm going to go to Danielle, since you also had a psychology background like Jackie, but have a slightly different kind of path.
So for me, really getting to where I am, where I founded my own search firm with a couple of other partners a few years ago, was really getting the hands-on training that I got working in a law firm and running the recruiting function at a law firm, and seeing how, law firms hire at all different levels. They have an entry-level program where they hire summer associates so they can feed into their first-year class. Then they hire experienced lawyers who can, feed into more of the mid-level, somebody who's been practicing law for a few years, and then really focusing on the business of law. Law firms are businesses, and they have to have revenue, and they have to have practices that are revenue generators for the firm to drive profits and to just continue to drive their clients in the way that they are able to be one-stop shopping for their clients and really cross-sell within the firm. And that was really where I learned about a partner and partners. So those are folks who have typically been at law firms and grew up through the ranks and have been practicing for 15 to 20 years, who have their own book of business, and learning how those partners and the economics of those partners' business fit in to where you can identify in the marketplace who other firms want to go after, who are sort of the hot,
players, the Aaron Judges of the world, if you will, for law firms, and really work with the strategy of the practice group leaders on how to attract that talent. So for me, I had great mentors, and I really had an opportunity to learn various roles at a law firm, which enabled me to focus on that. I really wanted to focus on experienced lawyers. But there's a ton of things that people in recruiting can do just in terms of, at the different levels. If you want to focus on a summer recruiting program, lead that function, go on campus, interview students at undergrad and graduate programs who want to come in and get hands-on experience and then walk them through it, or then do more of an experienced. You can do it for a lot of different industries too. It's not just driven towards law firm. And what I'm seeing is that, in terms of background, it really varies. It can be people with business. It could be former lawyers who no longer want to be lawyers and want to, people who have business degrees, marketing degrees. There's if you come in and you are really able to team up with somebody who can mentor you and show you the ropes, anything's possible regardless of your degree.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. I'm going to go to Bill, since your degree was vastly different from what you're doing. Just, what was the requirement to get into this selling job that you have now, and what drew you there from history?
Yeah, sure. So, I didn't take an advertising or communications class in college at all. I didn't even know my business existed. I took my business degree and I'm like, I guess I'll go work on Wall Street because that's what you do with a business degree. So I went for a year, and after a year of looking at spreadsheets and not really talking to anybody, I decided this isn't for me. And I caddied all through college. So as I would caddy, I would talk to a lot of the people that I was caddying for and ask them about their jobs. And I remember there was a guy I caddied for who he seemed like he had a really interesting job. And at the time, he was president of sales for this new network that they just launched, which was called the E Network, which everybody knows now. So I sent him a letter because there was no email back then, of course, and went and met with him and kind of spoke to him about the business. And then he said the best way to learn is to go to the agency side. So similar to Sarah, I went to the agency side and started there. But at the agency that I worked at, there were a lot of different people with a lot of different degrees. And, now as I'm going on college tours with my son, I see a lot of the schools will have obviously communication, but then an advertising major or media buying classes or PR classes or marketing classes. So if I knew what I know now, I would have taken some of those classes to get an idea of what the business is really all about. But those are some of the classes that you can take, whether it be a marketing major, PR, communications, and then all the different advertising classes within there. You'll kind of learn about the business. But I've hired people with communications and marketing degrees, but I've also hired English majors and history majors and art history majors. So, my business is sales. It's all about relationship building. So one of the key things I look for is somebody who can, communicate, build a relationship, and really kind of just have those interpersonal skills.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bill. How about you, Katie?
Sure. So I was a math major in school. And what I'm doing now, even though it's called engineering, I wouldn't necessarily say that you need an engineering degree to do it. Zurich specifically had a 7-month training program for us to go through before we were actually given our own workload and going out in the field by ourselves. So we had classes every Monday from like 12 to 4. And then we'd spend the rest of the week with our mentor actually out in the field observing and practicing the job, basically. So that is something I realize that a lot of companies actually have for new hires. You don't necessarily need to go in knowing anything at all. You need to be coachable instead, and you need to be able to learn on the job. So I think that is definitely something to keep in mind while you're in school and picking a major. It's not necessarily going to send you on one specific career path. You're able to learn on the job.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's good for everyone to know. Christina, last but not least.
Yeah, so I had a business management major, which is pretty general. I ended up falling into financial services because I got an internship the summer before I was graduating in a financial services firm in Smith Barney. So I worked on Wall Street and I really liked it. And then I started hearing like, what do I need to do to sell? What do I need to do to, sell stocks, bonds, annuities? What do I need to do? And it was taking a series of exams. So it was I felt like I was back in college or high school, and I had to study for a lot of licenses. So it's licenses to supervise others, licenses to understand what a stock is, what a bond is, when to purchase it, how to recommend it. So I got all those licenses, and I was on the sales side for a very long time. One thing that I want to reiterate, you never are locked into a career. I did so many different jobs in my 22 years. I would say that prior to this role, it was a totally different type of experience I had. I led HR for our wealth management. That was about 5,000 field advisors. And what they were looking for was someone to join the HR team that had business background and could understand how it was to be on the sales side. So I had to learn that skill, the HR side of it. But I had all the business that I brought with me. So I just want everybody to think of that when you think of careers. You might be doing something today, as long as what Katie said is you're coachable and you want to learn and you kind of self-advocate to do so, you can learn other disciplines and everything just makes you stronger as you go forward. So I know from my HR experience, I really, really have a great team engagement and just as a people leader, it's helped me tremendously.
Great. Thank you, Christina. I have my next question. I'm going to skip over. My next question was about what important academic courses you took in high school that helped you, but it seems like doesn't matter. You can take anything and go any career. So I feel like I'm going to skip over to the next question, which seems a little more applicable, which is what character traits are important for success in your career? I know like Katie mentioned coachable and adaptable, I feel like is what a lot of people are saying. So just, to help in any career, but if there's some traits that are more important specifically for your career. We'll start with Bill.
Yeah, I think the ability, I mentioned like interpersonal skills, the ability to deal with people. I'm in sales, so I constantly have dealt with people my entire career and building relationships. I started doing this 27 years ago, and I deal with a lot of the same people I dealt with 27 years ago. So the ability to kind of build and foster relationships over a long period of time is definitely helpful. The ability to multitask is important too, because I'm not doing the same thing every single day. There's always a different fire drill that pops up, and you have to learn to adapt. So I would say that's definitely important too. And then just to piggyback, I think on what Christina was saying, just as I'm going on these college tours with my son, I feel like there's so much pressure to declare a major and know what you're going to do. At 17 and 18 years old, you have no idea what you're going to do. I think everybody on this panel has kind of, made twists and turns in their career. So I think you just follow what you want to, what you think will be interesting, and that will lead you to something that, you'll love to do for a long period of time. So I think that's just an important thing to point out, is that whatever you major in, you may not be doing 5 or 10 years from then.
Great. And I love that, giving the kids a little advice about that. And yeah, if any of you want to share that, when you share your trait, just any advice you have about developing that trait, or about, like Bill said, just, what not to be worrying about now. Danielle, how about you?
So for me, I think the most important trait that I can bring to the table is listening. I'm in a client service business, whether that's helping somebody who's contemplating making a move and really listening why they want to make the move. Why are they unhappy? What's prompting this? Having them want to check out what the market has and getting knowledge on the legal market. Really listening to what's important to them, so that way I can bring them ideas and really work with them to help them identify things and opportunities that might make sense. And also when I work with clients have strategies, they have goals that they need to achieve, and to be able to listen to who they are culturally, who they are as an organization, who's going to fit in, sort of what they're looking for in terms of if it's a specific practice of law, really being open and not going into those meetings with my own ideas, because I really am in a client service business. So I need to be able to understand what their goals are and then how I can help them and execute their plan.
That's great, because I think that's something all the kids could be doing now, just listening to each other, listening to, listening in a different way, and that can help them in any manner of things in high school as well as careers. How about you, Sarah?
I would say for me, it's really about intellectual curiosity. So that constant need to learn and grow and do more. I think that that's something that in both of my careers, I've found that if I didn't know how to do something, I would Google it, I would look it up, I would watch a YouTube tutorial. And I was not a math major. I didn't do a lot of math, and yet so much of the world that I lived in media planning was math-based. And so I taught myself how to use really complex formulas in Excel by watching YouTube. And that got me promoted faster. It got me raises faster. I had many more opportunities because I could always look at how can I figure out how to do this a little bit better. And knowing that even if I knew a lot, I never knew enough, and that I could always grow. And for me, I think that especially as I'm hiring people, and I've probably hired thousands of people at this point in my career, and that's the one skill that I look at the most, because I can teach people how to do a lot of things, but I can't teach people how to be curious. It's something that they come with. And when people are curious and they're willing to keep learning every day and they look at everything as a learning opportunity, that's where I feel like there has been the most success for me in my career and for the people that I've had the pleasure of working with.
Great, thank you, Sarah. What about you, Katie? What do you think is the important trait for your career now?
I think a really important thing, especially since I'm just starting out, is to be super receptive. So what I do is when I write a lot of reports, I get feedback, and I have to be able to take that feedback and apply it to my next report so that they just get better. I think that's what I struggled with in high school. I wanted everything to be perfect. Every assignment I handed in, I needed a good grade and all that. But it's definitely something I've had to learn to let go. I'm not going to get things right on the first try. And I just have to take whatever feedback I get from my colleagues, especially ones that have been at the company much longer than I have. And I have to take their advice and run with it in the future.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Christina, what about you?
So I would say one of the things that I've done over the years is I leaned in. I would volunteer for stretch assignments, things that would totally take me out of my comfort zone. And I'll give you an example of speaking in front of like a large groups. I'm okay if it's like a small conference room at first, but they'd say, you're going to present in front of 500 people at the National Sales Conference. And that was a little jarring to me, but I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure it out. I'll get help. I'll raise my hand. I'll ask for help. I'd ask people to listen to me. I'd practice, and I got good and I got better. So I'd say, as you get out of your comfort zone and you lean in for those assignments that you might feel a little bit uncomfortable doing, it really helps advance your career over time.
Great. Thank you, Christina. And Jackie, what about you?
I mean, what more can be said? These are such amazing traits. I would hire anyone who had any of these traits. But I would agree. I think to sum it all up, it's having that growth mindset, right? Knowing that you can continue to evolve yourself, that you're not fixed in the way that you are, but all of your experiences just make you better. And that ability to want to be able to learn and put yourself in uncomfortable situations. The other thing I think is also really helpful, because this is the thing we find a lot with our more junior employees who are always looking for new opportunities in career progression, is to continue to advocate for yourself, continue to put yourself forward, continue to say, I might not have all the skills for this role, but I would really love to know either what can I do to be able to get there? This is where I want to go in the future. Be your own career architect when you sort of get in and kind of get an idea of what you want, because then you'll have those champions and those mentors to help bring you along. So if you wait for something to fall in your lap, it just isn't going to happen. So making sure that you have that as sort of your cornerstone, I think would be really helpful.
Thank you, guys. Those are great. Everything you said is great. And I think it's going to be so helpful for students to hear this and to take this in and think about how they can you develop those traits now in high school and college and going forward. So I'm going to pass it over to Beth Ann for the rest of the questions.
Okay, I'm going to start with Danielle. Can you provide examples of different paths one can take in your profession?
Sure. So there's a number of different paths that someone can take in the world of recruiting. I focus very specifically on one industry, which is the legal industry. But all organizations have a function of recruiting that typically falls under HR, but is much more focused on hiring and retaining talent than, you know, benefits or payroll or things, other functions that fall under HR. The biggest point is there's a ton of industries, right? There is legal, there is banking, there's healthcare, there's education. You can work at a bank, a hedge fund, the career service office of an undergraduate or a graduate school, helping those students, you know, find their career when they're done with their studies. And also, just again, back to my earlier point, you can focus on different levels of recruiting. So either summer internships, entry-level recruiting, experienced recruiting, and just, you know, also another path is after you get recruiting under your belt, a lot of my peers and colleagues in this industry have moved on to HR, have done what Jackie has done and pursued degrees in organizational psychology and are now leading HR teams. So there's definitely segue from, I think, you know, recruiting to HR and vice versa. So there's a lot of opportunity, and you don't feel like you have to be pigeonholed. You can kind of feel out what feels right to you. For me, it was working with experienced professionals who wanted to be in the legal industry. It's what I've been doing for over 20 years, and it's just, that's what I found most rewarding.
Very cool. What about you, Bill?
Sure. So there are a lot of different ways to get into media buying and planning. You know, I started on the agency side, so I'll use McDonald's as an example. And I think Sarah mentioned she was a media planner. I was a media buyer. So as a media planner, Sarah, if we were working on McDonald's, Sarah would decide, all right, here's the advertising strategy for McDonald's. Here's, you know, we're going to advertise these products these months. And these are the media channels that we're going to use, whether it be TV or print or out of home. As a media buyer, I would take Sarah's plan. I was a television buyer. I would take Sarah's plan and Sarah would say, all right, you have $60 million to spend in TV. And then I would go and negotiate with the network. So, you know, at the time it was just ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and then 20 cable networks. I would decide, all right, how am I going to take that $60 million? What networks should we advertise on? And then now we really don't even call it TV buying anymore. It's really video buying, because there are so many different media channels that you can advertise on. I'm sure a lot of the kids don't even really watch TV. A lot of the commercials that they get served are on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, or, you know, Netflix is going to have commercials soon too, because it's $1 billion business. I worked at Amazon for a while. Amazon is a retail company, but they kind of fell into the advertising business, and it's now a $30 billion business for them. Amazon, stop, as my Alexa goes off. And then you can go to the sales side. So I worked at Discovery Networks for a while. So I represented the Discovery portfolio to all the media buyers, and would negotiate deals on their behalf. But now, you know, Facebook and Snapchat and Amazon and Instagram, they all have sales teams too, because they're going out to the advertising agencies to kind of sell their products and talk about how they're able to reach consumers. So there is a wide variety of ways to get into advertising, and you know, different paths that you can take within the media buying space.
Thank you. A very interesting behind the scenes look. We don't think of that when we look at the ads for things.
Yeah.
What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, it's funny to think about the good old days of media planning and buying and so many different career paths that came from that. I was a television planner and then became a digital television planner and buyer when digital was new and the internet was new. And a lot of people went on from that career path to do things in magazines, in production. There were so many different ways that people went from the advertising agency. And then DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion, is so specialized that a lot of people kind of end up here. But there's so many different places that it works within an organization. Sometimes it's in the strategic function, sometimes it's within the HR function, other times it's within the operations function. So there's a lot of different places it can kind of fit into things. And then it's all being bucketed more and more into this big umbrella category called ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and governance. And that is basically the way that big corporations and companies do something with social conscious. So whether it's sustainability, environmental protection, or it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, or their programs like where they donate money to, or where they activate volunteerism. There's a lot of different paths that work. And there's also this version of diversity, equity, and inclusion in basically every industry out there. So it's becoming more and more regular that people are going into this, and that it's getting more and more as a specialized function within different types of companies.
Great, thank you. What about you, Katie?
Sure. So I know in my job, there's 3 main paths that people tend to take. Zurich specifically takes a group of like college grads and trains us their way, as they say. And then people can go on to manage teams of risk engineers, which a lot of them do. And then there's also the route of becoming what's called an underwriter. So basically you take all this knowledge that you have as a risk engineer, and while you're the risk engineer, you're physically going to the properties and assessing the risk and telling the underwriter if it's a good idea for us to write this account. Basically, if they were to have a disaster, we would pay them money. And so a lot of people take the knowledge that they get from risk engineering and they use it as an underwriter, a property underwriter specifically. So I actually know a lot of people that have gone on to do that. And then there's also brokers. So they're kind of the middleman between what I do as my job and the customer that I'm going to see. And they help us come to an agreement on prices, basically. But I know that I work for a huge company. So we have this thing called Talent Marketplace, which is basically, as a risk engineer, I could take some of my time and try out different things within the company, and I could do something completely different than what I'm doing now. So that is something I didn't know even a year ago that companies have. So I feel like from your first career, you can go a million different places, and you could also have been a million places before you end up where you are.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you. What about you, Christina?
So I'm in financial services as well, and insurance. And I would just echo everyone. There is a marketing department, there is human resources with D&I, and there is, IT. So there's any type of career path you can take at large corporations. I'm in the sales stream right now, but I was in human resources. I also was on strategy teams prior to that. So I would just say, if you're started a company, you get your first job, and there's something that you see interesting within that company, you apply for it, or you try it, or you advocate to your current manager that you'd like to try something new or take a stretch assignment, because there really are tons of opportunities within large organizations in every type of discipline you may think of. So right now I'm in sales, but I am working really closely with our technology team, trying to create a tool that has artificial intelligence to help us predict the needs of a client. So that's pretty cool, right? So that's like a technology type role, but I'm in sales. And then I'm also a champion for D&I as well, for the wealth management team. So we create diversity plans on how we're going to advance ourselves in recruiting and in engagement activities across the company. So I'd say, even if you do take the sales path, you get exposed to other type of disciplines as your career grows.
Great, thank you. And Jackie?
Yeah, again, I don't know what more I can say. There's so many different opportunities and different paths people can take. I guess I can talk a little bit about the consulting world, because I think that's a little bit different. And I did spend 18 years there before coming internal, as we say, jumping over the fence to the internal side of the world. So in consulting, it's really interesting, and it's a great opportunity if you're interested in working with a variety of different clients and solving a variety of different client needs. There are different paths you can go. We tend to call it, you're either deep, you're a subject matter expert, you really love a certain area. And I was on more of the HR consulting side. So in my area of expertise, as I mentioned before, was employee attitudinal research. So looking at to see what motivates employees. But there are others, which is like compensation, executive compensation, looking at communications, really, really deep, or you can be really broad. And that's really where my career led me, which was how can I help be a solution architect for whatever my client was looking for across all of these different areas that we knew that we can solve problems for them. And then that led to a career more in the HR side. So a lot of people in consulting will either stay in consulting for the majority of their career, or they will go internal into another organization and be that subject matter expert on the corporate side.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. The next question, I'll start with Katie. How difficult is it to find a job in your field when starting out, and what steps can be taken to get your foot in the door?
Sure. So I know there were a lot of applicants for the job I currently have, but what I did to get my foot in the door was I went to every career fair that Fairfield offered. I handed out my resume to different people. I connected with them on LinkedIn as I was standing right in front of them. And then later on in the day, I sent them a message asking where I could apply for something. If it was an internship, a full-time job, it didn't matter. I just wanted them to remember me. And it actually worked. I was at the career fair in Zurich, had a representative there, and we talked, and she told me to apply for the internship, which was summer 2020. And so, of course, that did not work out. The internship was canceled, but she and I had such an amazing relationship. She called me maybe a month after it got canceled, and she was like, I'm emailing you the link to the full-time position for next year. Just apply and see how it goes. So I think to get your foot in the door anywhere, you should go to those career fairs, keep those connections, message people, get coffee, do whatever you can to network, because it's really important.
Yeah, that's a great story. I'm glad it worked out. What about you, Christina?
So I received my first job similar to Katie through an internship. I had applied for internships and I received one with Smith Barney, and I worked the summer prior to my senior year in college, and they called me in the middle of college senior year and offered me a role. So all the weight was lifted off my shoulders for trying to find a job upon graduation, but getting to that internship is key. And I'd say just really going to those career fairs is crucial, as well as knowing friends, family, neighbors. What career are they in? Could they do a warm introduction to you? Maybe they have an opportunity. I think Tuckahoe does a phenomenal job for the seniors having an internship program. Having a senior this year, I know going to work 20 hours a week and really getting to see if it's a career that they would be interested in is super helpful. So kudos to Tuckahoe on that internship program as well.
Thanks, Christina. What about you, Jackie?
Well, this is going to come full circle. So when I graduated college, there was no LinkedIn, but so there was the hardcore paper applications. And I had when I left college, when I graduated, the job market was not like it is today. There were not a lot of job opportunities out there. It was very difficult to find any entry-level position, especially in consulting. So my first job was actually as an administrative assistant at Zurich, which is so funny that you said that you work at Zurich. So it's all coming full circle today. But that was such a great opportunity to get my foot in the door. It wasn't the job I wanted, but it was the job I needed at the time. My health insurance was running out. I had to get something, and there wasn't a lot out there. So for me, I only stayed in that job for a year, but it gave me the footing to then put myself out there for the job I really wanted. And I think that's really important for people to understand. You may not get the right one first time out the gate, but do it to try and get some of that experience, build your level of credibility, and then you can put yourself out there with some additional experience that you might have. Whether it's applicable or not, at least you have then some corporate experience, or if it's not corporate, in a different type of industry or environment. I think that will help you as you try and get to that next level. But networking is 100% the key. And I think now it's so much easier for everyone to network. I mean, you might want to be a little careful about what you put out on the social media world, but from a networking perspective, I think that's really important. A lot of people find their jobs that way, and a lot of people continue to advance their careers that way as well.
Yeah, very true. Thank you. What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I also got my job by way of internships. I think internships are an incredible way to dip your toe in the water, get to know some people, get real work experience. I think that a lot of times when people go through school and they go for their first job, there's such a learning curve about how to be an employee in a company, in a corporate environment, that if you have an internship, you get to start to understand a little more about how that works, because it is so different than anything you really experience in school. And now part of my job is to help run our internship, fellowship, and learning labs programs. So internships for people in college. Fellowships are 6 months for people who are trying to get their foot in the door in the industry. And then learning labs, we get to teach all of our people from any different background. They could be changing jobs, they could be recent graduates, they could have be coming out of technical school. And that gives them a 6-week hands-on course for learning how to do the media side of what is called programmatic advertising. So there's some really great opportunity for people to get into our field just by way of the company's openness to bringing new people in, because we want to encourage more people to join our industry, because it's an industry that really, really works well because we have new people constantly coming in. As for DE&I, it's such a new field that most places are kind of just starting to figure out what they need and what they want. Sometimes they have somebody doing it on the side or as a volunteer, which is what I was previously doing. I had my full-time job, and then I was doing the DE&I part as a volunteer. And then other people are bringing it in to be more of its own department. And that really kind of specialized experience is really very desirable right now, and it's growing rapidly. So for especially the last few years, we've seen the need for DE&I people go up much faster than there are people who are experienced doing it. So in this moment, people who come with knowledge or even just passion for DE&I are really a desirable thing. I'm hiring for people on my team all the time, and I can never find enough candidates. So in this moment, I think it's a really exciting field to go into because it is so brand new.
Yeah, so true. Very interesting. What about you, Danielle?
So similar to points that Christina and Jackie made, my first job out of college was it was before LinkedIn. The market was not one where you can easily search job postings. There wasn't, a Monster or an Indeed even at that time. So it was good old fashioned networking. I had a family friend who ran a department and made a warm introduction. And that was how I got my foot in the door. That obviously was over 20 years ago. So a lot of things have changed. And I think specifically if someone has a real interest in recruiting, they would be able to find internships. I know that a lot of like my former law firm that I worked at, they have now an internship program for their recruiting and also their talent management team. Also, there's more organizations that focus, networking organizations, whether they come out of LinkedIn or whether they're driven out of industry, where they post job opportunities. So it's really about making it a job to find a job and making sure that you're making those connections and that you're really putting yourself out there. And I think it's really important what Jackie said, where you wind up, your first job out of college might not necessarily be where you're going to be, but it's just to get your foot in the door, to get experience, to build your resume. That will open up so many other opportunities for you.
Thank you. We're definitely hearing some themes here. And what about you, Bill?
Yeah, I'll continue with the, internships and networking. It's key. Internships are great because you're not committed to a certain job. And if you work in a company, if you're in one department and you find another department interesting, be curious, ask questions. How do I get into that, that field? And really kind of being persistent and finding ways to stand out and being, like I said, being curious. I found out about my business because I was a caddy and would ask people about their jobs. And then I wrote a guy a letter that I caddied for. When I was on Wall Street, I was looking for another job, and there was a guy who drove a Bentley every day and parked it right near our office, and his company was the license plate. So I looked up what his company did, and I paid the valet to give him my resume and my cover letter. And the guy called me that night and offered me a job. It wasn't for me because it was an all commission sales job, but you just need to be curious, ask questions, and be persistent and make yourself stand out, really, is what you need to do.
Yeah, this is all really, really good advice for our high school students. Really practical information. Our last question, I'm going to start with Jackie. What do you enjoy most about your career or find the most rewarding?
The most rewarding. So for me, I get to have a seat at the table for a publicly traded organization that is impacting our consumers and customers. And what my job is to make sure that our CEO and our leadership team understand the importance of our people, because they can have the best strategy out there and whatever they want to do. But if we're not focused on our employees and the people that are really the people who are delivering on that strategy, then it's for nothing. So for me, that's extremely rewarding when you can see sort of that in all that investment that we're putting into our people showing up on the bottom line and in really helping to see our fruition of where we want to be as an organization. So to me, that's the most rewarding, as well as looking at our more junior employees that are coming in. I mean, obviously, everyone's heard about the Great Resignation and the job market being so hot. And what we're trying to do is how do we keep our employees, but then also how do we engage the next generation of employees that are going to be coming on board? So those are the most exciting parts of the job today.
Great, thank you. What about you, Sarah?
So I get to talk to people every day about what lights them up and what they're passionate about, which is so exciting. I talk to people all around the world. I was on this morning with Australia and our team there. I then had a conversation with our Pride Committee in Singapore, and then our women's group in London. And then we were talking about how we're planning for our AAPI speaker next week with our team in Canada. So it's just this great international camaraderie where I get to talk to them constantly just about these really wonderful things that we're celebrating as an organization. And then the other thing is that I get to teach people how to make other people feel great about working together. And it's so much fun to see when it clicks and how just turning a meeting by adding Post-it notes to a brainstorm can suddenly make people feel like they have the opportunity to engage when before they might not have said much of anything. And that spark when we see people participating more and more is just incredible, because I feel like I get to really make an impact and make people's work lives better and contribute in a way that gives back, which is really exciting for me.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. What about you, Katie? What's the most rewarding part of your job?
So I think the most rewarding part of my job is when I connect with a client that we have, because I'm a scary insurance person that nobody wants to talk to. So when I actually go out on site and I have a genuine conversation with anyone that I'm meeting and I talk to them about what I'm trying to do and help them understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and they actually click and it clicks with them and they connect with me, sometimes we'll end up just getting a coffee after and hanging out. So I think it's definitely the connections I'm making, whether it's within Zurich or the people that I'm meeting as clients.
Great, thank you. What about you, Christina?
I love helping others. I love helping others being able to retire with dignity. And I also thoroughly enjoy my team. Just being a people leader, being able to create an environment where others can express their full potential, it's just very rewarding. So I think that just being around a team that is really together and inclusive makes all the difference.
Great. What about you, Bill?
Yeah, I think, I like leading and motivating a sales team. I love working with people. But what I think I really love about my career, my business in general, is that it's a business not a lot of people know about. It is a multi-billion-dollar business, but it's all the relationships over, the 27 years I've been doing it. It's the same people I deal with for the last 27 years. We may have moved jobs over the course of our careers, but we still deal with each other every single day. And we're like this little media family within all these crazy companies. So that's really what I enjoy, is the relationships that I've built.
Great. And last, Danielle.
So I think another word I use to describe myself besides recruiter is a matchmaker, because ultimately that's what I am. I'm a matchmaker. So for me, I understand the value of, the lawyers that I work with and how far they've come in their career and how important these moves might be for them. And also understand from a client's perspective how important an acquisition might be for them and how it might change the trajectory of their firm. So for the most rewarding part for me is when I'm successful in making a placement that results in either, and this happens, a lawyer calling me, 6 months after he or she has made the move and saying, this move has turned out to be everything that I wanted it to be. Because lawyers by nature are risk adverse. So you want people to be happy. You want to know that they made the move for the right reasons and it's a good fit and it's where they see they're going to be for another long portion of their career.
Very interesting. So that concludes our questioning. All very, very fascinating. Thank you all. And I think we have, you're all different industries. However, there are several common themes, which can definitely hit home to the students listening. Right now, we'd like to open up the chat and see if anybody has a question. We have one. How can I start my own business? Would anybody like to take that?
I can answer it. I started my own business. I'm happy to share it. You have to have a solid business plan. You have to know what your goal is. You have to be able to have, a why, a why, a how, a who. Figure out exactly who you want to be, what you want, where you want to serve, what clients you want to tap into. And once you have that part, then the other pieces fall into place, right? There's steps. There's just, you have to brand your name. So for us, we had to come up with Springboard. We had to it's called a corporate document. It's an LLC. So we had to work with a lawyer. Luckily, I'm married to one, so he was able to do that for me. And to form, your company, you have to register yourself with, if you're in New York State, with New York State. You have to develop a website. All of those other things. We didn't have a website after we launched Springboard for close to 7 months, because we wanted to take our time and really see how we wanted to promote ourselves. The biggest and most important thing is coming up with a business plan. Coming up with a business plan that you're passionate about, that you want to get out of bed every morning and go and do and make sure that it's successful. All the other things are just, I think, check items. But the most important thing is finding something that you're passionate about, that you want to go and to execute a business plan on.
And I also started my own business on the side. And I will say that there's an amazing program in Westchester called SCORE. And it's a group of entrepreneurs who give business advice about starting a new business. And I actually worked with them originally when I was in college and looking to start a business. And they were incredibly helpful just to give me the ideas of where I needed to go to do all of these steps. And then I revisited them again 20 years later when I launched my small business. So it's a really good resource on their website. They have so much information, and it's an excellent way to learn about entrepreneurship, especially for this Westchester area.
And there are courses in college now that are geared towards entrepreneurship and teach you the ins and outs. And almost all colleges and universities offer them in some format that'll give you at least a little bit of background.
Yeah, actually, Tuckahoe High School offers an entrepreneurship class now, which is super helpful. Anybody else have any other questions? You can just put it in the chat. Not seeing any. Does anybody else, do any of the panelists have anything else to add? Your information has been extremely, extremely valuable, and we so appreciate you dedicating your time to the discussion tonight. I know I'm ready to jump ship and join the business world. Healthcare stinks. So if anybody's looking, thank you so much, everybody. Does anybody have anything else to add?
I just have one thing, and the internship program that's still at Tuckahoe, it originated my last year, so I was the first class to participate in it, and I think we had maybe 7 kids do it, and it was the best thing I have ever done. It really launched my interest in actually getting an office job. I worked for Assemblywoman Amy Paulin just in her office doing research, making phone calls, stuff like that. But I would really say it sparked my interest and really made me motivated to get an internship than my first year in college. So I would definitely, I know the seniors probably already are doing it, but if you're a junior, I highly, highly recommend it.
Thank you. We have several thank yous. This has been an amazing workshop. Thank you so much to all our panelists. Thank you all. This is great information. Way to go, Katie. You have a private fan club. Thank you. Thank you so much. Very informative, amazing job. So you all have many, many fans. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I feel like it was a really very informative, and I hope lots of people rewatch this and all the students see it, because I feel like the advice you gave is so helpful. I'm gonna make my children watch this because I feel like it gave them so much information just for high school, college, and career. So thank you guys really so much.
Thank you all. We appreciate it on behalf of the Superintendent, Board of Education, Dr. Lenahan, Mr. DeBellis, and the school administration. We really appreciate each of you tonight. Your guidance and wisdom is well worth it, and thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.